So I'm Rikesh Shah, I'm the lead digital partnerships manager at Transport for London. My role is primarily to work with the likes of AWS and other partners to drive innovation in the organisation, and we do believe open data is one of the success stories, as Patty mentioned earlier. Today I'll talk about how open data has transformed elements of our organisation, particularly from a digital transformation point of view, and it's underpinned under our digital strategy. But also, it's important to say the role of cloud, particularly AWS and some of the tools that Prati mentioned earlier, and he's not paid me to say it, has helped us deliver some of the benefits that we set out to achieve up front. In terms of today, I'll give you an overview of TFL. I'll talk about some of our customer challenges, and it's important to look at this from a customer perspective. What outcomes are we looking to address as an organisation that's right for our customers? It's very easy to turn this into a technology story. Now we'll talk about technology at the end, but it's about the outcomes that we're after as an organisation. Then I'll touch on open data and how what it is and how we've used it, and then what the benefits have been realised, and there'll be some real tangible things that have happened and some really good outcomes, financial outcomes that we can also claim. And finally, the role of cloud to enable that. So starting with TFL, what is TFL? So TFL as an organisation was formed in 2001. It's a combination of lots of legacy organisations. So the London Underground is 150 years old. We've got the bus network. If you look at, the numbers are there, but we have about 7 million journeys on the bus network every day. We have just under 5 million journeys on the tube every day. We are also responsible for the strategic road network in London. So they're essentially the big roads, the A-roads, the A1s, the A2s, the A3s, all coming into London. They carry 33% of London's traffic. We also control every single traffic light in London. Interestingly, we're also responsible for 40,000 trees. And there's lots of other modes. We regulate the private hire trade and the taxi trade. And we also have driverless trains on the DLR. We also manage the cable car. So most of you that have arrived here today would have interacted with TFL in some shape or form. We also have a responsibility for road safety. And a colleague earlier just touched on air quality. That's an agenda that we're also very much looking to address or do something about. I'll give you a quick video and that provides an overview on TFL.
London is nowhere quite like it, but it's the people that make London special. And getting you to where you want to go is why Transport for London exists. Whether your journey is by bus, tube, train, road, river, tram, licensed taxi, bicycle or foot, we provide a safe, reliable, joined-up travel network right across the city with 24 million journeys made every day. And every penny of our income, including your fare, is reinvested into running and improving your services. We're proud to serve London and to be part of its future, now and for generations to come. Because every journey matters to us, especially yours.
Okay. So I'll touch on some of the customer outcomes that we're after in one of the following slides. But we are much more than moving bits of metal around the tracks. So our motto or our purpose is very much around keeping London moving, working and growing and make life in the city better. So we see ourselves as playing a core role to enable London's growth story. We're governed by the Mayor of London. So Sadiq Khan is our chairman of the board. We've got lots of challenges as an organisation. A large challenge is population growth in London. It was touched on in the earlier presentation. London's population at the moment is 8.5 million. In the next 12 years, that's likely to grow to over 10 million. So to give it some perspective, it's the population of Birmingham and Leeds coming into London and not leaving. Or another way is imagine tube train loads of people coming into London every week and not leaving. That's the challenge we have on the transport network. The other challenges we have are, from a money point of view, we have a fares freeze. So whilst we've got a growth agenda, in parallel, we do have a fares free, so we've got less money to play with. We also used to receive a government subsidy, but we have to be operationally self-sufficient in the next 2 years. So that's the first transit authority in the whole of Europe that will be not subsidised. But in relation to today's conversation, the rising expectations of customers. Customers expect more and more. They're expecting the same experience through our digital products in particular that they receive through Amazon, eBay, Google, or anyone else. So there's no point us competing with other transit authorities when we're talking about experience. We should be talking about the experiences that they're used to. So for us, that is very important as an organisation, and we take customer satisfaction extremely seriously. And that builds onto the next slide, which is, I spoke about 31 million journeys every day on our network. We strive to focus on every journey, and every journey does matter to us. So we're trying to get every journey right for users, for yourself and other people using our network. Got to get that right. We need to provide value for money. Many people think TFL has shareholders and makes lots of profits. Actually, every pound that comes into TFL through fares or other sources is reinvested back into improving public transport. And finally, something that again I'll touch on today is customers are expecting innovation. So whether it's contactless, and TFL is the largest merchant of contactless in Europe, whether it's open data, we're constantly looking for new ways, whether it's frugal or not, to drive innovation into our system. And if we get that stuff right, customers will trust us more. And if customers trust us more, there's a much better relationship between TFL and our users. So let's talk about digital. What's happening more and more is there's a shift now so the red line is usage of mobile phones, smartphones, and the blue line is desktop. So you can see the split now, that over the last 2 years, people are expecting more information on the move. People aren't just logging on to the desktop site now and wanting the information. They want the information whether they're at the bus stop or on the tube network or wherever they are. Conversely, and going back to Pratim's earlier point, that means there's more data that comes back into TFL to analyse and potentially run our services even better. So there's two use cases there. The other thing is 81% of Londoners use a smartphone. And in fact, this research was done last year, so I suspect it's even higher now. 83% of users are spending time on apps when using a smartphone. So the context of apps, 10 years ago, apps didn't even exist, whereas it's become part and parcel of our lives now. 83% of Londoners use TFL's website. So we have about 100 million page views a month. It's about 20 million visits a month. So there's a lot of demand for our services. And generally, latency cannot be taken lightly. People are expecting that information right now. If we're saying your bus will arrive in 10 minutes, it's just not good enough. You want to know if your bus is here in the next minute, 2 or 3. We also have social media as a channel. We have just over 5 million followers on Twitter. But in the context, again, of today, this is probably an important message. So 42% of Londoners are using apps powered by TFL data. So that's our open data story. If we're getting 20 million visits through 83% of Londoners using our website, it's probably about 10, 11 million people using apps powered by TFL data, which we don't control. You know, it's up to the app developer to produce whatever product or service they want to, and they're using our data to do that. And I'll touch on that in much more detail. So our open data journey initially started in 2007, and it was inspired by the BBC. Because what the BBC were doing were making TV listing information available publicly. And as a result, people were using that for, it's probably post-CFAX days now, or teletext days, those that can remember it, but people were using that data to develop their own products and services. What we found was people were using our website and scraping a lot of data. And by scraping the data, they were then getting things wrong. And then as a result, the wrong information was going out to our customers. So we quickly decided to make some of our static data available. It's just timetable data. And we immediately found people were developing products and services. So moving from very much a static-led approach to where we are now, there's probably around 600 apps, public transport apps, powered by TFL data. And I've not even touched on some of the air quality ones or some of the roads ones. These are solely focusing on public transport. So you can see there's an ecosystem that's been created here using our data. and that clearly can coexist with TFL's website. There is no competition between the website and the apps that are out there. So what do we mean by open data? My view on this is we should be making the data available unless there's a commercial, legal, or technical reason why we shouldn't. So our starting position is, let's get the data out there, and let's use this ecosystem of developers and others to help solve some of our problems, or at the very least, or let's drive some reach. Let's use their platforms to get our messages out to Londoners and others. Underpinning all of this is transparency. By us making all of our information available, TFL is seen as a much more transparent organisation. We get lots of FOIs, we get lots of journalist queries. Actually, by pointing people to the data that's out there, it can't be used out of context. Secondly, reach. So going back to that 42% of Londoners using apps powered by TFL data, and that's growing. It means we can use other people's platforms to engage, and that means the customer is engaging with us through their channel of choice. They don't have to use TFL's website if that's not the right channel for them. They could use Twitter, Google, Citymapper, or anything else they wish to choose. Also, we can develop niche products. TFL is a large organisation, so if we were to produce focus on some of the challenges that we have up front. If we were to produce an app for every single challenge, there will be thousands of apps that TFL will be producing. That has a cost to develop an app, to market the app. Whereas we've got a community here that's developing products overnight. I've seen examples of us releasing data on a Friday and seeing a new app out there on a Monday, and it immediately being used by customers. Secondly, another benefit is the economic benefit to London. It supports Tech London's agenda, and we're directly contributing to that. If there's hundreds of app developers, they'll have an ecosystem of staff and others. That contributes to London's agenda when it comes to technology. And finally, it drives innovation. Rather than TFL producing things, we're asking the market, the economy to produce things, and as a result, we're seeing some great innovation out there. So what type of data do we make available, and where do we host it? So there's probably about 200 data sets, and if you're about to embark on this journey, what I would suggest is don't just go out there in your organisation and look to make all the data available. Focus on your business outcomes. What challenges do you have as an organisation? What outcomes are you looking to achieve? And then focus on developing the data sets that contributes to that agenda. Otherwise, you'll create an internal ecosystem of people running around developing data sets that are not relevant, and it'll cost you a lot of time and effort. So we have lots of public transport data, bus arrivals, bus departures, tube movements, cycle hire docking stations, river bus, overground, journey planner. And that's what we started with. And a massive catalyst for us were the 2012 games, where we had to get customer information out as quickly and as reliably as possible. So we used our ecosystem to achieve that. We started to move into new spaces. We're starting to focus on safety. So there's there's road safety data out there, bus safety data. We've also started to look at live road disruption, and we started to work with other organisations to understand what's going on our road network and how we manage traffic. We also have live camera images on 5-second loops. So if you wanted to visually see where there's traffic hotspots, you can log on and get that data. And the other area we started to focus more and more now is parking. We have some car parks, we have some sensors within the car parks. How can we get people to park somewhere and then hopefully use public transport? Again, the focus for us is maximising capacity on our network for the reasons I outlined earlier. So, if you wanted to access our data, or if you were developing an open data platform, my advice would be keep it simple. If you expect people to sign up to lots of terms and conditions, they won't do it. So for us, it's probably 2 or 3 main things. One is, don't try and impersonate TFL. It's your own product and your own service, so make sure it's classified that way. And secondly, make sure you're not throttling our system and completely killing the cloud. And so as a result, we have some limitations there. Apart from that, there's not much else. I've touched on the reach element. The other area I've not touched on is data analytics. So we've got academics out there who are helping us and telling us about our network and helping us solve some of our problems. And it's really interesting that we've got data scientists from various institutions or various organizations working with our operational team. So as a result, again, we've got significantly more people helping us solve some of our problems. So the outcomes are, in fact, that number's not quite right now, it's 11,000. So we have 11,000 people registered, developers registered to use our data. At the moment, we have 600 apps, and they're used by over 42% of Londoners. And as I said, there's lots of data analytics products also being developed, lots of case studies being written, and lots of academic institutions also working with us. And as a result, it also helps people understand our organisation much more, rather than us spending lots of time trying to brief people in. Deloitte ran a study about 3 years ago, and they've used a simple equation, and I think there's many more variables, so that number's probably higher. But they've said it's, in terms of the value of open data, it's worth between 15 to 58 million pounds in terms of customer time saved. So what that means is, if you imagine someone like me who gets to my bus stop at 7 o'clock in the morning and just sees that bus disappear in the freezing cold, and then now wait another 20 minutes because I live out in the suburbs, freezing cold. So I've lost 20 minutes on my productivity. Whereas if I've checked my bus, and I know it takes me 6 minutes to walk to my bus stop, and I get my bus, it means there's a saving. There's a saving to me and there's a saving to my productivity. So that's what the equation they've used, and they've aggregated it at a much more global level. But clearly, there's lots of other benefits that I mentioned earlier, so I think that number's higher. And that was based on about 150 apps. So in fact, it's probably quadrupled now, if we're using the same equation. There's significant investment in London and London's tech agenda. And there's lots of apps out there, whether it's TubeMap, Citymapper, and others, who are all based around the city solving problems. And clearly it supports to the national agenda too. And as a result, it supports UK PLC. We also link it to very much to our chairman, our mayor's agenda. And again, it's very easy to start developing new data sets. So you touched on air quality earlier. We work with King's College in London, and King's College have a series of sensors placed across different boroughs. It was very easy for us to use that data to understand air quality. And I'm not an air quality expert, but clearly what we're focused on is exposure to NO2 and trying to reduce that exposure, which has a direct link to respiratory diseases. So what we want to do is raise awareness of where the greatest areas of exposure are, so people can change their behaviour, and we can invest in our operational systems accordingly. And there's lots of other agendas that I've touched on, which again, open data helps us develop new products and services very quickly. The other thing we've started to do more and more is not just work with app developers, but we've started to work with world-leading tech platforms. So Twitter is an example. Last year, we launched a trial. And what this trial was, Twitter developed an engine, and what they did, they plugged in our API. It was a very simple piece of work from our point of view. They plugged in our API, which allowed their customers, their Twitter and our Twitter followers, to access, and based on their preferences, get direct messages, which will tell them what's going on with the service right now. Because Twitter had changed for those of you that are Twitter followers, had changed the chronological order of getting your tweets. So as a result, if we had a message to say the central line is delayed, it sometimes got lost. Whereas getting a direct message means you know what's going on the network immediately. And then focusing on the innovation point, we're now exploring chatbots with them. So rather than people calling a call center, they can ask the chatbot about the status of the service, and the chatbot responds back accordingly. So again, many customers are enjoying that. And then the reputation benefits, again, to London and wider are significant. And we're seeing some good numbers very quickly. So we've sent over 1 million direct messages in a few months. The other partnership that I wanted to focus on is Waze. So for those of you that know Waze, it's a crowdsourced application for road users. And we're using Waze in through two or three main reasons. One reason is to provide information to Waze users about what's going on the London road network. As a result, people can pre-plan, they can check before they travel, and they can pre-plan their journey if there's congestion. Waze also has a series of notification engines, so they're helping us. So Tower Bridge was closed recently, and they pushed out notifications based on geolocation to warn drivers not to approach Tower Bridge because they'll be stuck in congestion. And then conversely, we're using a lot of Waze data to support some of our operational decision making. Waze has a lot of data about our users, and it's aggregated, so none of it's personal, and we're bringing that back in to make operational decisions. But none of this would be possible if it wasn't for the cloud and us being able to provide our data, because it's a data sharing agreement. And we've also started to work with Google, and Google's doing something similar, where if we've got large-scale events taking place, Google Maps now is pushing out, updating its maps and pushing out notifications for us. For those of you that are Android users, you may have seen a new feature on your phone more recently, whereby Google is giving you information about your road network, what's going on close to your proximity. And again, they're using a lot of our data to enable that. And as a result, from our point of view, it means people plan their journeys, and that means there's less congestion. And then I've touched on some of the other apps. There's lots of app developers we're working with, and as I say, that's used by 42% of Londoners. In terms of our work with AWS, not only do we have a relationship through a supplier-buyer one, we also have a strong partnership about driving innovation. And what we did last October was we ran a hackathon with a wide range of partners. And it was quite inspiring to see 16 ideas being developed in a week. So we issued some challenges on a Monday, and by Friday we've got 16 very good ideas. And we've started to implement those partners within our organisation now to help us solve some of our problems. So that's working very well. How does our open data work? So I think the main message here is, whether it's our website or whether it's a native app, it's exactly the same data. Our website is powered by our APIs, and all of those APIs, all of that data is hosted on our cloud. So there's no preferences. You don't get exclusivity on TFL's website. But the types of data we have is enormous. So for those of you that are Londoners, if you imagine how many stations there are over 275 stations, and imagine how many bus routes there are, and how many buses there are thousands of buses. There's lots of data in real time that's coming in to TFL. What we tend to do is we make all of that data available into what we call the unified API. So if as a user, let's imagine you're at Farringdon Station. Farringdon Station, the tube station has a point. So does the docking station outside of Farringdon Station. So does the bus that's stopping at Farringdon Station. From a user point of view, what you want to know is that's Farringdon Station. So there's a national code called NAPTAN, but what we try to do is have consistency. So the unified API provides that consistency of information. And as a result, all that data that's coming in is consolidated. So if anyone's journey planning, they get the right information and the relevant information that they want. In terms of cloud and working with AWS, the benefits we've seen are significant. I think, firstly, the level of flexibility, the level of cost saving we have. I think from a data center point of view, we used to have lots of separate data centers across TFL's network, whereas now we can have all of that on the cloud. I touched on some of the data analytics. There is no way as an organization, with all the data we have, we can mesh different spreadsheets together. It just wouldn't work. Whereas going onto the cloud, you can just mesh data sets together and solve some of the problems that I outlined earlier. It's allowed us, and I'll touch on it in a minute, it's allowed us to make real-time updates to our website and our data. In the past, we'd have system outages, we'd be doing work on the weekend. We now have I'm not a technical person, but a red-green switch, which means we can continuously deploy any updates to our website and data. And it's extremely secure. There were perception issues in our business that, what about security? Cloud is not secure. Actually, we've not had any issues through using cloud. And that's just an example of our blue-green switch. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the nice introductions. About the API, Recently, I visited the api.tfl.gov.uk and put the APP ID and the API key and try to get the accidental stats, typing in the year as a number, but it's not giving me back any data or anything. How can I get that data, or how can you help me?
Let's have a look at it. I'll have a look at it in a minute.
Nice, thank you.
Let's have a look at it. Is it the KSI? So is it the collision data?
I don't know. I accept some kind of the accidental stats, but I cannot see inside what kind of data is coming back.
Let's have a look in a minute. Yeah.
Break time, that'd be grand. So any other questions for Rakesh?
Yep.
So one of the main problem I saw in underground, when I'm in underground, there is no network, and I can't see. Maybe I have to catch another underground train, and maybe there is no assistance. Is it possible for IoT, like they have a small device, so that can capture that information and user can see on that location of the?
Yeah, and it's something we're currently exploring. So at the moment on our platforms, most of our stations, you have Wi-Fi access, or you can have Wi-Fi access. You're talking about on train, is that right?
No, underground maybe.
Underground. Yeah, so I think there's 3 points. I think the first point is if you're underground and you're on a platform, you should be able to access Wi-Fi at most stations. In fact, most of our stations are above ground, but where you're underground, you should be able to access Wi-Fi at most stations. I think the second point is our Crossrail service that comes into effect in 2018, next year, will have Wi-Fi on board. And I think the third point is we're currently looking at other technologies to get information to our customers. Now, whether that's meshing different Wi-Fi points from above ground and then being able to notify you, or whether it's Bluetooth technology or beacons, we're certainly exploring at the moment. But we do have staff available. And if you can't see them, let me know what station.
Okay. Any other questions for Bjorn? Can you grab the box?
Just during your presentation, obviously you've got a lot of data sets, but have you looked at other data sets and their potential interaction with yours? I was just thinking police or the emergency services, or even things like the quantity of venues, licensed venues around your stations. Have you looked at using that data to influence your own analysis?
I think that's a really good point. And I think as an organisation now, we're certainly into moving into now meshing data sets with other organisations. So an example is air quality. We've started to look at air quality and meshing that perhaps data with some of our road analysis or cycling analysis. We've certainly started to do some work with the likes of DEFRA, where DEFRA are telling us, they've got sensors as to what the level of rainfall is. Well, what impact does that have on transport or public transport? So we are starting to get into that space, but we're hoping the wider ecosystem will also do that.